are mine. Jacob says to his son Joseph, the two sons you bore here are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And think about this. Joseph had 12 sons. We learn from the Bible that the 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel, right? But when you look in apocalyptic books, Revelation, Daniel, whatnot, you see that there were not 12 tribes. There were 14 tribes. You know, 2 of them had disappeared, right? And why is that? Well, it's because Jacob took on Joseph's 2 sons that were born to him in the land of Egypt. Now, I think, what must Joseph's brothers have thought? That, you know, the oldest, right, is thinking he's going to get the double portion, right? Jane, that was the tradition, right? The tradition was if you were the oldest, you got a double portion, right? But in this case, Jacob had already said the youngest, Joseph, is going to get the double portion. But in addition, he's then blessing the 2 sons of Joseph by making them his own and giving them full portion as well as the brothers. So that cuts the amount that each brother is going to get. I always thought, what would they think? What would they think? I also thought, when these 2 kids, Manasseh and Ephraim, when Joseph is going to die, will they then get additional portion when Joseph dies? I don't know. But in any case, just in verse 5, it's talking about Jacob takes on these 2 grandsons as sons. Verse 8 of chapter 48. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" You see, Joseph's sons, Jacob's grandsons, did not know their grandfather. Think about that, Cindy. 17 years in the land. Now it's a long way from where Joseph was to where Jacob was. But they didn't know their grandfather, right? Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons, whom God has given me here." So he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." I always love that because though their mother was the daughter of the high priest of On, Joseph still raised his children and said, "God blessed me with these children." Not the high priest On, or not the God On, or the high priest, but God blessed me with that. Now the eyes of Israel, verse 10, were dim from age so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your children as well." What a blessing for Jacob. Joseph was his favorite son. He went years and years thinking he was dead because his brothers his other sons brought back evidence of his death. But he was alive. Jacob got to see his son, his favorite son, and not only that, got to see his grandsons. Then Joseph took them from his knees. The children sitting on grandpa's knees, Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. You see, the tradition was that the first son got the double portion blessing, and Manasseh should have Jacob's right hand, right? Manasseh, the firstborn, should have Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim should have Jacob's left hand. But something happens, interesting. Verse 14. But Israel, or Jacob, he stretched out his right hand and he laid it on the hand of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands although Manasseh was the firstborn. So instead of holding his hands on right hand on the firstborn, left hand on the secondborn, he crossed his arms and put his hands on the head. He said a blessing to Joseph. And then when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him. This man of God, Joseph, was now displeased. And he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head." Joseph wanted the tradition. He wanted the expected blessing. He wanted what everyone else had up until this time in the history of the church. But verse 19, but his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations." That's really powerful for me for a lot of reasons. These two children got equal portion with Jacob's sons, with Joseph's brothers. They got their blessing an entire generation early. They should have had to wait until Joseph was about to die. But they got blessed when they were just children. And they got blessed in the wrong order. It just makes no sense. But you know, like when I was young and I said to my mom, I want the blessing that my brother had of speed and strength and agility, God had something else in mind. God is a lot like Jacob was. Now, you have to think about it a little deeper because, you know, it's not just that these children got blessed. It's that these children who were born from the daughter of the high priest of On, a heathen god. You know, what must the Israelites that were there in the land of Goshen or Egypt, what must they have said? Oh, you know, you can't play with those kids. Yeah, they're Joseph's kids, but you know, their mother is the daughter of the high priest of On. You better leave them alone. But they were still blessed. Doesn't matter who your mother was. You're faithful to God, you can be blessed. Their maternal grandpa was a heathen high priest, but they were blessed. My dad wasn't perfect. My grandpa wasn't perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. But you know what? You can still get the blessing. They didn't even know their paternal grandfather. And he was Israel, blessed by God, wrestled all night with God. They did not know him, but they were still blessed. They were no longer grandsons. They were sons. How much of a blessing is that? Guess what? You're not a grandson. You're not a granddaughter either. You have a daddy. That's it. You have a daddy. God will bless us. But he will do it his way. You just have to be willing to accept it. So how does this affect us now? I thought a lot about things that I could say about a story, how this has affected me, but I thought that what I would do is talk about me being a salesperson. You know, Kim's trying to be a better salesperson, a better buyer, negotiator and stuff. I think she looks up to me for things like that, and as she's trying to buy things. And so I thought I would tell everyone, Kim, you can listen to, about how I became a successful salesperson. Because you know what? I was not the best student. Dave Brewer was a far better student. You can ask him about it personally. Way better GPA. I was not the fastest. I was not the strongest. I was not the best looking. How did I become the best salesperson at most of the companies I've been at? Well, it's real simple. There's two things, really. The first is way more important, and we're not going to focus on that. The first thing is that my wife prays for me every day. If you have a spouse, one of their responsibilities, and I don't care if you're the woman talking about your husband or the husband talking about your wife, pray for your spouse. Because there is blessing there. There's blessing there if you're willing to accept it. But it was a very simple thing. I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was very young. I was inexperienced. I knew absolutely nothing about the plastics business, nothing. I had a boss who was extremely successful, on the rise. His name was Mark Clay. And I was in the office, and I said, I'm going to go call on this customer, which he gave me, and it was not a big customer, a small customer. I went up to Angola, Indiana, which is probably a 45-minute drive. And I went in a suit. Well, you know, in the previous business, you had to wear a suit. I went in a suit. Owner of the company meets me at the door. Come on in, come on in, come on in. Go look around the plant, do whatever you want to do. Come in and see me when you're done, and we'll talk business. So I go around, I do the things salespeople do. I write down stuff, and I observe things, and how am I going to be able to sell this guy? And I went into his office after half an hour or so, and he said, did I get the loan? I said, what? He said, did I get the loan? You're from the bank. I said, no. I said, I'm a sales guy. I'm your appointment for this morning at 8 o'clock. He says, you're in a suit. Salespeople don't wear suits, not here. I said, well, I wore a suit. He said, forget about that, kid. We'll go to breakfast. And so we go to breakfast, and I drop him off, and I drive 45 minutes back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. I sit with my boss, and I get a telephone call 10 minutes after I'm there. It's this guy that I had met. And he said, hey, did you find a bracelet in your car? I said, no, but I didn't see one. I'll go out and look. And I go and look, and in fact, there's a bracelet on the passenger seat of the car. And I went back in, and I called him. I said, hey, do you want me to put this in an envelope and send it to you? He says, hey, how about you bring that back up to me? And so it's 45 minutes one way. Debbie, I didn't want to drive that far. Honestly, I didn't. Back then, I wasn't the driver I am today. But I did. I drove it to him because it's a salesperson, and you do that. I took it to him, and when I gave it to him, he says, boy, I'm so glad you gave that to me. Not many people would have done that. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you know, some of you younger people won't know this or won't remember this, but some of you that are properly aged like myself, they used to have these sort of gold nugget bracelets and necklaces and whatnot, you know, but they were like, looked simulated gold nugget things, right? But these were real. They were real gold nuggets around his wrist, strung up. It was worth, like, back in 1980, whatever, it was worth, you know, I don't know, $35,000, $40,000, something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, honestly, I'm just thinking to myself, if I knew it was worth $40,000, I might not have given it back to you. But I did. I gave it to him, right? And I left kind of shocked and, you know, thinking I would have a good story to tell the boss. And then I went back and, you know, 2 days, 3 days go by. The weekend goes by, and Monday comes. And Monday morning, I'm in the office like every Monday morning and talking with my boss in the conference room, and telephone rings. And it's the president of a very large plastic company around the Fort Wayne area. And the secretary answers the phone and announces into the conference room that so-and-so's on the phone. And my boss says, oh, I've been trying to get this business for 20 years. Put him right through. He says, he doesn't want to talk to you. He wants to talk to Bill. And he says, no, that's going to be a mistake. It's the president of the company. Bill doesn't know this guy. Well, he knows Bill, and he wants to talk to him. So I picked up the phone, and he says, I need 6 rail cars a month, every month from now on, from you. Call me back, let me know the price, and you can have the business. And I felt pretty good about myself. My boss was flabbergasted because he knew what he was doing, and I didn't know anything, nothing. And he was kind of a little bit upset. And 10 minutes went by, and he's trying to get out of me what I did, and the phone rings again, and it's another president of another company. And he says, and the secretary, Judy, announces it, and the boss jokingly says, I guess he wants to talk to Bill too. And she said, actually, he does. And by the end of the day, by the end of that Monday, I had 80% of the polyethylene plastic business in Indiana, in the state of Indiana, in one day. And I did not know how to spell most of the stuff that I was selling. I did not know. So what happened? What happened? I didn't find out until 6 weeks later. That's how dumb I was. As I went around to meet these people who had already given me their business and I didn't even know any of them. And I finally went up to this one guy that had lost his bracelet. I went to him and he said, did you get business from all the different companies, all my competitors? Did you get business from all my competitors? And I said, yeah, how do you know about that? He says, well, I'm the local leader of the Masonic Lodge. And I went and told your story over the weekend. And they all were required, because I told them they had to, they were required to give you their business. And they gave me the business. So I'm not proud of the fact that a Masonic leader led to me getting business opportunities in Indiana to become the salesperson that I was. Not happy about that. No more happy than Manasseh and Ephraim were that their mother was the daughter of the high priest of On. But those children were still blessed. And it was then that I realized that God sometimes crosses his arms to bless as he will bless, not as you and I will bless. Because my boss deserved that blessing. I didn't deserve that blessing. What blessing do you deserve is the title of the sermon. You deserve the blessing that God intends for you. God blessed me there, and I never look back. And I'm fond of telling Barb, and many people have heard this. All a salesperson does is drive, talk, and eat. I don't know a lot about plastic, but I do believe in the blessing of God. And I do believe that when my wife prays for me that I get blessed. I skipped decades of work to get to a place, to where I should have been, in decades of work. I skipped that and got it over a weekend. Not because of anything I did, but because of the blessing of God. Look, Gideon was not from the right family, right? But he defeated the Midianites because God chose to bless him instead of the right person, right? What about Samson? Samson gave away his strength, and he didn't deserve a blessing. He was blind, he was in chains, he was defeated. But when he was willing to accept it, God chose to cross his arms and bless him. And it was a powerful blessing. And in his death, he defeated more than he had defeated his entire life up until that point. Which of the disciples, or Mary Magdalene, or any of the followers of Jesus, which of them had the right family credentials to get the blessing that they got? Not one. Or did God just cross his arms and choose to bless them? You see, God's hand is not too short. He will bless you, no matter where you came from, no matter what your past is. You may think you want the blessing that your brother has or that your sister has. That's your brother's blessing. That's your sister's blessing. You wait, no matter your past, no matter other people's blessing, you wait for God's blessing for you. It will come, and he will do this because you and I are no longer grandsons, but we're sons of God and heirs to the promise, and he loves you. Amen. I think we have our normal closing song. We have this hope.